we're going to be looking at natural language processing in the context of a browser. Now, natural language processing is a large class of different kinds of AI models. So these range in some from things like sentiment analysis, which we've already looked at, to large language models that drive applications like ChatGPT, and some of those would be like GPT 3.5 or 4.0 that have output that is very similar to what we would typically have as natural language that we would create, but they're capable of a lot of different kinds of tasks as well. So before LLMs and these kind of more general purpose models came out, though, there were a lot of models that were developed for specific kinds of tasks. And these different kinds of tasks were very limited in their scope, but they did a good job within those constraints. And that's typically what we are able to do within the context of a browser. Having a large language model in a browser is just really not feasible, but you can do some things in a browser with natural language processing. And in fact, sometimes whenever you're building natural language processing into an application, you don't necessarily need to use an LLM to do some of that natural language processing. You can use some of these more purpose-built models that do specific kinds of tasks to accomplish the same kinds of things and pay a lot less money for them and do them much quicker and get quicker turnarounds on the results as well. But in any case, we're going to be looking at this mostly in the context of a browser and some of the kinds of tasks that you might consider when building applications that use browser technologies, because even though we can't use the LLMs per se, we can still do things that LLMs are typically capable of doing as long as we understand the kinds of limitations of what we're going to be looking at. So we're going to be doing basically two examples. We're going to look at question and answering, which is a very common thing for models. And then we're also going to look at text summarization as another example where you can take a corpus of text and reduce it down in size to get something that is much shorter. So let's go look at the samples and then we'll go and look at the code and kind of how those work. So I'm going to be doing question answering with a derivative of the BERT model, and I'm going to be doing text summarization with a derivative of the BART model. Now, these are two different kinds of LLMs. Originally were an LLM. The BERT model is a kind of actually the source of both BART and BERT, and it's been around for a while. And this is actually using a version called DistillBERT, and it's specifically adapted for question answering. So it's been pared down and doesn't have quite the robustness of the original model, but it's focused enough to where it will work in this context. And so that allows me to use it in a more constrained context where I don't need as much memory or CPU to run the model. Now, BART is similar to that in that it's designed for text summarization. So this natural language processing here has a custom model that's designed for that kind of task. So as long as you're sticking within those constraints, doing text summarization or question answering, it should work fine. Now, these aren't general purpose, so I don't have just a model that I can use for both of them at the same time like you would be able to do with something like ChatGPT and one of its models. But in any case, let's take this text right here and let's paste it into my context. And let's ask some questions about this text. It's about a Tyrannosaurus. So let's say, who found the T-Rex? And let's see if this gives me an answer. And answer Peter T. Dodson. He found it. Let's say, where was the T-Rex found? Let's see if it gives me a location. South Table Mountain, okay. And so when was the T-Rex found? So I can spell that correctly. And July of 1874. So at least the tooth was, according to this corpus of text right here. So you can see that I'm using natural language as my context, my original source. I have a question that is, a natural language question, and I'm getting back contextually relevant responses based on my question and the original context. So it works well enough within this particular example here. So the context is somewhat limited and the questions are fairly straightforward, but it does work well enough for that kind of thing. So let's try to get a text summarization of this. So if I run this, it's going to take a little bit to run because the model is a little bit heavier, and text summarization is actually a more computationally intense task than just asking a question. So it's got to be able to kind of consider the full corpus of text and then understand it in that. And when it does, it's able to then predict something from it. So this is a summary, 2 sentences or so. It says, a tooth of what is now documented as the Tyrannosaurus Rex is found in July of 1874 upon South Table Mountain, Colorado, by student Peter T. Dodson. The fossil was believed by a large species of whatever that is. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it. Anyways, I think that's a fairly accurate summary of at least the first paragraph of this. So that much is working. So let's go look at the code for this. So I have 2 different HTML files for each one of those. I have question answering with Bert, and I have question answer as text summarization with Bart. So this one is pretty straightforward. It's using Transformers.js, which is the framework that I've used for a lot of other demos. And this one is wired up pretty much the same way. I'm using the question answering pipeline built right into Transformers.js. And you just basically give it a question and answering, which I'm getting it from the browser elements. And then I'm passing it into the model right here. And I'm getting an answer and just displaying it right there. So this code is very straightforward, doesn't require a lot to wire up. And it seems like it works rather well, as simple as it is. A lot of the complexity is kind of masked by the fact that Transformers.js is doing all the heavy lifting. All I'm doing is wiring it up and using some text inputs from the browser. So very straightforward there. And this one right here is pretty much the same kind of thing where we have Bart, and this one I am loading up Transformers.js right there, and then I'm telling it I'm going to use summarization pipeline, and I'm telling you what model to use. I'm using distill Bart, which is from the Bart model, which is a derivative from Bert. And once that happens, I'm providing it with some text, and then that text then just gets passed into the model and summarizer right here. And then it spits out some text summaries right here. And that's it. It's pretty straightforward. And again, all the heavy lifting is being done by Transformers.js. All I did was kind of wire it up to the HTML elements and provide some JavaScript to get the data from the elements and then insert it into the model. So very basic code, not a lot to it. So again, I'll make this code available in the video description down below, and you can go to the repo and download it and use it in your apps. So again, certain kinds of things you can do that. Now, as a follow-up video, I might just attempt to build like a miniature RAG app using this question and answering scheme right here. I think it'd be kind of a fun experiment, at least to try it. And I might post that in the repo as well. I haven't built it yet, so if it's successful, you'll know, because I'll probably do a video on it. If not, then I'm just mentioning it here and just letting you know to keep an eye out for that, and we'll kind of see if that's even possible. But for now, this is going to be available, and as always, thanks for watching, and like and subscribe and share this with your friends.
If you like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel by clicking on the subscribe button. You can also like this content by clicking on the thumbs up, or share this content with your friends, and also comment in the comment section down below. You can also find me online at www.blaze.net or on Twitter at @TheOneMule. And as always, thanks for watching.